Okay, we are live streamed. Welcome, everybody, to Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Open Space Subcommittee of the Environment and Transportation Committee. Paul, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Kristen, I believe we're going to start with Patrick's bills. Is that all right?
That's my understanding. I'm just going to be tuning in.
Okay, yeah. I figured Patrick told you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're ready to vote.
Let's go. It's
Charles is
5:30.
here.
It's 5:30. We are live streamed. It is 5:30.
I move unfavorable.
Well, the first bill, Charles, we're going to do is your Somerset Sunday hunting. So I'm really surprised to
You're
hear
good
you
one.
stating.
Good
You
one,
talk too fast, Charles.
We're going to, because Paul Pedito is here from Department of Natural Resources, we're going to start in with the hunting bills. And the first one numerically is House Bill 143.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this bill did pass our committee last year in the House delegates and got mired in the Senate. So it has not anything changed in it.
Okay, I see. Yeah, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like we have 6 out of 10 members are on.
You want a motion or you want to wait?
Now we need to wait.
All right.
Yeah, 3 and 3, we're in good shape.
Oh, I see. Wait a minute. We've got
And now we got Sheila's there, Jay's coming in.
okay, we are live streaming, everyone. We have begun. Okay, we have 8 of 10 members of the subcommittee. Carlene, is there anyone in the waiting room? Carlene? All right, well, maybe we'll have to start. And what we're gonna do is, we're gonna start with, we have a guest from Department of Natural Resources, so we're gonna start with the hunting bills. And numerically, the first hunting bill is House Bill 143. And that is the Somerset County bill. Hey, Carlene, is there anyone in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, as I said before, this is the same bill that we had last year that passed the
We have everybody now.
committee.
Okay, all right, and this is House Bill 143, and we are live. House Bill 143, Somerset Sunday, yes, Delegate Otto, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As I said, this is the same bill that we had last year, and it passed the committee in the House of Delegates and went to the Senate and sort of stymied in the committee over there, given other circumstances. I think it was collateral damage to some other legislation. So I'd move favorable if that's appropriate, or if there's further discussion or questions, we'll be glad to try to answer.
Second.
Second. Okay, Delegate Lehman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Delegate Otto, in looking at the bill, am I reading it right that it removes Somerset County from the section from those counties that are only allowed, in one part of the bill, it talks about hunting deer one Sunday, either one Sunday a month or one Sunday during the hunting season, and it's struck there, but then you're allowing like all Sundays for certain game birds and mammals, which I assume mean deer. Is that what the trade-off is? You're removing it from the part where you say it's one Sunday for deer only.
That's correct.
So what is
So
the
the ambition really is for turkeys and deer. I mean,
Okay.
we have a spring turkey season that we'd like to be able to do on the Sunday as well, because it's one basically weekend that they'd have that opportunity. They might have the whole week, but and the other thing is the deer. If we want as many opportunities as we can to deer hunt with the given season of the weapon of choice at that point in time, be it archery or muzzle loader or firearms, to be able to do that, because we have a tremendous deer population problem, and it's one of the more humane ways of dealing with the deer population, really about the only way to manipulate it, other than the crop damage permits, and that always meets with a challenge.
Well, thank you for that. So one comment and one quick question about birds, game birds. What is the allowance right now for turkey or any other birds? How many Sundays are you allowed to hunt those?
I might ask Paul to answer that question. He'd be a better person to be able to tell me from the department to explain that.
Sure, I'll jump in. So for Somerset County, there are no bird hunting opportunities per se. This is right now, because there's nothing that would fit the current criteria as the subtitle describes it.
So wait a minute, right now there are no Sundays at all that they're allowed to hunt turkey or other birds, game birds?
Right, well, so that section of the code specifically eliminates the vast majority, which would be all the migratory game birds. So that's your ducks, geese, doves. That's in the subtitle now, and that applies statewide. So those are out absent a change in that particular sentence in the I think the last paragraph. The
So
only thing,
yeah, I don't doubt what Delegate Otto is saying, but how do we know it's turkeys? It doesn't, it's so odd to read these hunting bills. They're, you know, they're frankly not unlike state alcohol laws. They are. I mean, they're just so, you know, I jokingly say I'm waiting for the one that says, you know, on the 5th Sunday in February in a leap year that you can hunt certain things. It's like about the only thing we haven't ever seen. It's confusing, but how do we know this is about turkeys? I don't see where it even says that.
so it says game birds and mammals, and in the definition, the Natural Resources Code definition of the species, Delegate, really the only thing that would be left would be turkeys, quail, pheasants would fit in there. You're talking about, you know, a few hundred people that pursue those species, you know, statewide, but those are the,
Well-
yeah, I appreciate the complexity of this, especially for folks who don't do it every day. So I'm
Well,
sympathetic.
and so Delegate Otto, I will just say for the record, which I've said many times before, I am actually as much an animal lover as I am not opposed to hunting. My husband hunts in Pennsylvania, as it turns out. And I do actually agree with your, you know, observation that hunting in many ways is more humane. I don't love the idea of archery. I think it's kind of gruesome personally, but you know, with firearms, it's more humane, I think, to kill, you know, deer that way than have them starve to death or be hit by cars, which we all know that they are frequently. It's just that you know, and I think some of my colleagues share that concern about the argument that you have 6 other days, especially Saturday. I realize people work, but you've got Saturdays. Why do you need Sundays as well when people want to, you know, bird watch or ride their horses or just walk or hike in peace? And so that's why I always oppose these bills. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chair.
All right.
So, sorry, Delegate Otto, I have to.
All right, motion passes. Before we, okay, so House Bill 143, and it is one we did last year. And before we go on to 170, Paul, let me just ask you a question. We sometimes hear that when a county moves to the category that Somerset just moved, that basically allows hunting year round on Sundays. Is that right?
I guess it would be right if we had hunting seasons year round, but the facts are that our hunting seasons are generally constrained to October, November, December. That's the vast majority of our activity. There are seasons that run from September through the end of January. The front end of that would be your archery hunting, and the tail end is some archery hunting. And then those, really all the January seasons are going to be sort of lower participation and effort. So rabbit hunting and squirrel hunting. And then the winter archery hunting doesn't see nearly as much effort as, say, October, November. But there's no season, there's no species that you can hunt. Well, I'll correct that just so it's crystal clear on the record. You could shoot coyotes year round, but the coyote season's already set aside elsewhere in the code, and it's been open year round for, I don't know, I've been doing this 20 plus years. It's been open year round since then. So the Sunday hunting changes don't affect that. And I would say on any given Sunday, you might have one person out there pursuing coyotes in the entire state. So as a practical matter, this is really this is an October to January window. If one last thing, if you were to look at sort of the breadth of the hunting seasons, you might say, well, they run really from September to March. But that's if you include the migratory game birds. So your doves, ducks, geese, light geese, which are snow geese, are open right now. But those species are, as I said earlier, those species are specifically prohibited from Sunday hunting in the statute as it's drafted today.
Okay, Delegate Lehman, your hand is up, and Delegate Jacobs, your hand is up.
Yeah, I meant to take it down, but as Paul spoke, I wanted to ask then about when he's talking about seasons being primarily in the late fall and into the winter. What about Delegate Otto's comment about spring turkey season? What is that? When is that?
Yeah, so that is a spring season. It runs from mid-April to mid-May. You would pick up a couple Sundays. Were we to open it then? The beginning of that season though is those are half days, so it's a half hour before sunrise to noon. So yeah, arguably those days count, but it's again smaller effort. We have a few thousand turkey hunters as opposed to about 60,000 deer hunters in the state.
Which
you.
months did you say those were?
It's mid-April to mid-May.
Delegate Jacobs?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify with Paul that coyotes are a predator. They're really not a game animal. People don't pursue them like for game. They're more of a predator issue, and they're being taken out for that reason. Isn't that true?
Yeah, we really don't have, they are technically a fur bearer, but we don't have, they're one of the sort of oddities in that the legislature took them up individually years ago. And they sort of stand alone with their own year-round season in the code. People don't, you don't have hunt clubs that, set up camp to go coyote hunting like they do, say, deer hunting.
Okay. Next on the agenda is House Bill 170, Calvert Sunday hunting. Is Delegate Clark in the
Yeah.
House?
Move to approve. The bill's passed last 2 years in a row. First year it got cut off by COVID, and then last year it got caught up in the Hatfield and McCoy feud. And it's back this year. It's passed out of committee twice and passed out of the House twice.
Second,
Okay.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All right, all those in favor of House Bill 170, say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Are we missing? Okay, no, okay. I understand there's ways you can move the tiles around on the screen. Those who are interested. I'm not going to try to do it because I'm afraid everything was going to fall apart on me.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Paul a quick question?
Sure, but House Bill 170, that is favorable. Yes, of course, Delegate Clark.
Paul, the coyote, I got to admit, I don't know that much about, coyotes and what they, what kind of predators they are that much. But we do have some down around home, and they hang out in the summertime a lot, and you see them after dark around the cornfields and stuff like that. Is it true that they would go after small animals, pets, dogs and stuff like that, in people's yards?
It is. I think one of the things that makes coyotes pretty unique is their capacity to adapt and become sort of super efficient in the environment they occupy. They, for lack of a better phrase, they figure out that it's much more efficient to take, feral cats or small dogs that are left outside in suburbs than it is to try to run down white-tailed deer. So they're really adaptable, but at the same time, they're just as capable as rooting, they'll root through your trash if there's something meaningful in there and nutritious.
They're pretty scraggly looking in the summer. Yeah, because I see them, just as it's getting dark out on the road, the farm road around the cornfields every once in a while.
Yeah, they go through sort of a coat change. They have a winter coat that is thicker, and then their spring, summer, it gets thinner.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Patrick, you'll let me know if we have any amendments on these, but I think these are all rather straight. Right.
One has an amendment.
How about, okay, the next one on my list is House Bill 485, Montgomery County. Does that have an amendment?
It does not. This is different in the sense that it does not have a cross file, does not have a prior intro, it does not have an amendment, but it also doesn't have any opposition. Council actually supported this bill.
All right, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so if I understand right, this bill is not actually expanding Sunday hunting. It's extending a sunset, and this was a compromise that was worked out to limit it to certain hours so that the rest of Sunday is free for other recreational uses. Am I understanding that correctly?
Functionally, yes.
If I could, Mr. Chair, yes, in the discussion of the bill, that clearly is what it does. When we discussed it in the delegation.
Move favorable.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Lehman.
Sorry, just a quick question. Mr. Tracy, I can't help but ask about your answer functionally, yes, as opposed to why
Because
functionally?
it's a fair question. Just because we say we're extending the sunset, actually the sunset was taken out 2 years ago, and we put in language that functionally put in the exact same sunset, and that's the language we're taking out. So it's doing the same thing as taking out the sunset, but it's just doing it in a different way.
So wait, what was the sunset?
June 30th this year. And the same thing will happen if this legislation doesn't pass. It will sunset. I mean, it will be, other language will become effective on July 1st to 2022.
Okay, I'm sorry. And what is the other language briefly?
It just puts it back to where it was before the compromise was reached in 2017.
Which is what?
We're dealing with a compromise from 2017.
Correct.
It's
With
suns-
that had a sunset,
Uh-huh.
June 30th, 2022. When we rewrote the whole section a couple of years ago in 2020, we had to get rid of the sunset, but we put in language that said that this is going back to where it was, just like a sunset does, on June 30th, 2022, unless the Montgomery County delegation acts.
And can anyone say what was the vote in the Montgomery delegation?
I have it here.
For this bill,
It was 21-2.
Thank you.
Delegate Foley, then Delegate Ruth.
yes, and Patrick, my understanding of this bill is that it also makes another slight change. And maybe this relates to the 2017 thing, I don't know. But it used to specify which Sunday, and now it says a Sunday designated by the department. Am I right?
That is
about
correct. That is correct. I think the anticipation is that the department will take the same Sundays because they're required for every other county.
Right,
Sunday.
but that is a little bit of a change.
Not
too.
required, but those were the original Sundays.
All right. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what was the language that it will return to if this doesn't pass?
It will give the original 2 Sundays, the first Sunday in deer firearm season and the first Sunday in November of deer bow season.
Thank you.
That was the language in 2017. It will go back to that.
Thank you. I don't like the Sunday hunting. I don't, but I'm going to vote for this one because I understand that it's something that's already existing and it doesn't deprive, the recreational uses because of the time limit. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, Bill. Bill passes. All right, and we are on to House Bill 556, Queen Anne Sunday. Patrick, what do we have here? Yeah,
Yeah, this is, again, a reintroduction of a bill from last year. The amendment on it adds Caroline to the bill. And we have letters from both county delegations approving the amendments in the bill as amended.
all right.
Move to approve the amendment.
Second.
And Patrick, and what is the amendment? I'm sorry, what's the amendment?
It adds Caroline County.
Oh, it adds Caroline. All right, Delegate Foley.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm getting confused now. Which one?
Lost you.
I'm sorry. Are we on 556, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Okay, I was just confused. Thank you.
okay. The amendment adds Caroline. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed on the amendment? Amendment passes. All right, the bill is before us as amended.
Move favorable.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, bill passes as amended. I believe that is what we have for the hunting issues. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. These policies can get very confusing, and we have sometimes very confusing hearings and question and answer sessions. So we really appreciate you being here.
It's my pleasure. I really appreciate the invite and the chance to participate. So,
Okay, have a good day, Paul.
yep, take care.
All right. Patrick, is House Bill 711 yours?
Yes.
Okay, House Bill 711, Potomac River Compact Bill. Patrick, would you tell us what we have here?
Yeah, this is a really weird bill. All right, I should probably go to the beginning. In 2007 and 2013, there was legislation in Maryland and Virginia to address the Potomac River Compact, which establishes the Potomac River Commission. Virginia passed all of the legislation. Maryland passed some of it. So the only ones that should be effective are the some of it that Maryland passed and Virginia also passed. But the codes don't reflect that. And all this bill does is clarify that the amendments that passed in both states in 2007 and 2013 are in effect, which would allow our publisher to correct our code. And I believe we've come to the conclusion that the governor would have to issue a proclamation on the passing of the bill, which would allow Virginia to correct their code. But all this bill does is say that, hey, these amendments that pass both states are in effect.
So if we pass this, it would still take action from the governor and from Virginia?
Well, not for the Maryland laws, but for the Virginia laws, yeah.
Delegate Jacobs?
I'm glad that Patrick was able to explain this because I got to tell you, this one has been very confusing. I'm trying to figure it out, and I've been working with Patrick on a little bit, and it's, I knew we'd passed this stuff years ago. But it was confusing and I'm glad that he was able to explain where we are now. It's kind of the confusing path of government sometimes, but I guess we're trying to get some clarification from something that happened. Was it 2009 or 2013? 13, I guess it was. 2007
and 2013.
Yeah. So anyhow, I'm glad to see it. You explained it as well as you could, Patrick, because it's very confusing and
It is.
we'll pass it out of here and give it to the governor. So I move favorable.
Well, you know what, I wouldn't mind holding this for a week. I'm still sufficiently confused. Jay, would you mind if we held it for a week?
No problem.
Because I want to figure out
I'll be back a little later.
a couple
Okay,
things
see you
about this. Okay, anybody else on this before we move on?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, this is not changing any of the practices that we're doing. I think the Potomac River's been a compact has been a good thing. And I take it it's just clearing up our rules and our laws to reflect what has been in practice. Is that correct?
Possibly. I'm not sure what's actually in practice because the laws conflict between Maryland and Virginia.
All right. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, you see, one of my issues is that when we say that something clarifies, usually it clarifies an existing practice, but if we're not practicing it, I just want to know what we're doing more clearly. And so, Patrick, thank you for working on it. And I know we can revisit it. Anybody else on this? Okay, we'll hold House Bill 711. House Bill 727, the Maryland Parks Investment Bill, that's how I refer to it, has a Senate cross file, and the Senate put on some amendments. So let's talk, Patrick, would you run through what the Senate did with this bill? And then we won't vote on this today either, but we can consider over some time whether we want to follow, if it makes sense to follow their lead.
Okay, I will forewarn you that it's going to take a few minutes here. I mean, it's a 32-page bill. Senate amendments alter the designation of Park Services Associates to be park rangers, require electronic asset management systems for infrastructure to include the date a project was added, require dedicated asset evaluation teams to assess the condition of Maryland Park Service structures, infrastructure, and landscapes instead of just sites. Require the survey of historical and cultural resources to include an estimate of preservation costs, reduce certain mandated appropriations for the funds created in the bill and for existing funds. I remind the subcommittee that this is jointly assigned with appropriations, so they'll have to sign off on any of the money being moved around. Requires funding for historic preservation under the Park System Capital Improvements and Acquisition Fund, one of the new funds added by the bill, be for grants to, cooperative agreements with, or other methods of funding for non-governmental organizations. Increase funding under that fund that may be used for projects to mitigate climate change or for historic preservation by $5 million if the fund receives more than 70 million. Not a guarantee, but it is that the amendments establish another fund, the Great Maryland Outdoors Fund, which is more for marketing and the like, and getting the word out, things like that. They require 2 of the new positions. There's 100 new positions required by the bill in the Park Service. 2 of the new positions in the Land Acquisition and Planning Unit to be filled by assistant attorney generals with real estate law experience. add 2 citizens members to the Parks and Recreation Commission, 1 each appointed by the presiding officers. Requires DNR to brief the commission on the condition of the park system's natural and cultural resources. Requires DNR to submit the 5-year capital improvement plan and 5-year comprehensive long-range strategic plan required by the bill to the General Assembly. Looks like a drafting oversight. Usually that's the type of thing they would submit to the General Assembly. Has some intent of the General Assembly language that the Park Service identify and acquire land for a state park inside the Capitol Beltway in Prince George's County. And if the state acquires Carr's Beach for use as a state park, the park shall be a partnership park, which means that the state teams with a local government or a nonprofit to manage the park or purchase the land or whatever. Increases program open space grants to Baltimore City from the state sheriff funds to 10 million beginning in fiscal year 2024. Authorizes DNR to establish and provide for the management of partnership parks. Again, those are the ones between the state and a local government or a nonprofit. Limits worker compensation coverage for forest park and wildlife rangers. The bill adds that, but this limits it for occupational diseases to just Lyme disease. Extends the sunset by 3 years for authorized uses and funding for the State Lakes Protection and Restoration Fund. Requires DNR to submit certain report to the General Assembly regarding the status of Fort Tonawala Way and Fort Tonawala Way State Park. Apparently there's some confusion about the status of that park as to whether it's in this, whether the fort is in the park or not and who owns it, whatever. Requires DNR and the Department of Labor to identify opportunities to create registered apprenticeship programs for the Park Service and report their findings to the General Assembly. Just to help get people qualified to work at the Park Service, you know, especially with the 100 new positions and the like. And then it mandates a $2 million appropriation to MALF if current bills in this session, House Bill 855 and Senate Bill 942, fail. Those are the amendments.
All right, any discussion on this bill? Delegate Ruth?
Thank you. I just wondered, do we have these amendments that we, particularly with a
I think
thing?
I think Carlene sent them out earlier today.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Foley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick, did I hear you say correctly that it limits workers' compensation for rangers to Lyme disease?
Well, the bill adds the rangers to getting workers' compensation.
Okay,
And then and including for occupational diseases, but the amendments limit the workers' compensation for occupational diseases to just Lyme disease.
but everything else, but not anything else. So if a ranger.
Right now, they don't have any of it. So
I understand, but if a ranger gets injured on the job under HB 727 without the amendment, the ranger, if they get injured, if they fall or whatever, they get workers' compensation.
this is
But-
only for occupational diseases.
Only the diseases.
Yes,
Okay,
they
okay,
still get workers' compensation.
okay, thank you.
Delegate Otto?
I'm on the same lines of thought. That's a presumption clause that the original bill had in it now, and it's limited to Lyme's disease. That if they get it, they're assumed it's a occupational hazard.
I believe that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, how much does it change to program open space money going to Baltimore City? You said it increases it to $10 million.
I think it's 6 million now.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a second here. Let me check that. Bear with me, it's a 32-page bill, like I
I
said.
understand. That's why I'm asking the question.
6 million.
And it's changing. I'm a bit concerned about the acquisition and of property with that and using program open space money. I think a lot of these things are noble to use the property that we have.
Yeah,
Oh, clerk's here. How are you? You guys still in hearings?
So how much commitment is that? I mean, on that aspect of it, the acquisition and development of parks.
I'm sorry, how much?
Yeah, the on the acquisition part of acquiring more property for new parks and. I'll look at it. We'll talk.
Well, what it does is it sets up a new fund that's both for, I believe it's for infrastructure and for acquisition, and I'll tell you what it is so you know what to look at. This is I'm sorry. All right, it's on page 7 of the bill, and it's the Park System Capital Improvements and Acquisition Fund. And while it does have an appropriation to the fund, I don't believe it says how much, it doesn't limit
Okay.
for any specific spending for acquisition.
All right. Thank you.
I'll get Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sorry to be difficult. I searched my email and did not find the amendments. Maybe I'm just not searching right, but would it be possible for me
You know
to?
what? I think she sent out, because I sent it to her, Senate Bill 541.
Oh, okay, that might be why. Thank
Yeah,
you.
my mistake. That's what I sent to her. So that's my thing. We are having amendments drafted to the House bill that are identical.
Okay, that's fine. I can wait then. I mean,
We're working off the Senate.
thank
bill.
you. It's just easier for me to see them.
And you can actually look them up because the Senate third reader has been printed,
Okay, thank you.
41.
All right. Okay, so we'll take this up again. Patrick, thank you for going through the bill. It is a large one. It's a major initiative, and we can act on it in one of our next meetings. So we're going to hold House Bill 727. Which brings us to the House Bill 52, wildlife trafficking. Another bill which the Senate has acted on, and I think we may be ready to act on here in subcommittee today. House Bill 52. Patrick, do you have what the compromises have been?
Yeah. Again, this is for your information. This is Senate Bill 381. The amendments to that bill, which our sponsor, Senator Delegate Love, demoted her there. They include in the definition of bona fide scientific or educational institution, a zoo or aquarium that provides educational or scientific services, and that is accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Tightens the exemptions specifically for musical instruments by including knife or firearm, and provided that the covered animal species part of product is a fixed or integral part of the item, which Jennifer, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was in the bill previously. And then it changes the standard for the weight of the part of product that is in the covered animal species. Instead of 200 grams, it's 20% of the total weight of the instrument, knife, or firearm. Then it clarifies the institutions that DNR may allow to sell covered animal products if they're lawfully acquired, namely a bona fide scientific or educational institution, or one of those a scientific or educational institution authorized by DNR to sell, barter, or trade for scientific or educational purposes. And this is a little convoluted language because we had to work around the structure of the Maryland Zoo and how they are structured. It also requires a list of those institutions to be made available on request, publicly available on request.
All right, Delegate Ruth.
I'm sorry, my hand was still up. I'm sorry.
I have a question, Jim.
Yeah, Jerry.
Patrick, when you talk about the 20% of the weight of a gun or a knife, would that include a musical instrument like a guitar?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Would anyone like to move the amendments?
Move the amendments.
Second,
Any discussion on the amendments? All right, in favor of the amendments? Aye.
aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, the bill is before us as amended. Delegate Jacobs, did you hear from your Senate counterparts about this bill?
There were 3 amendments. I did get the one from Senator Huff on Senate Bill 381. I don't know if they was sent to the House or not. I can give you the amendment number, but that's all I have.
But I think those were all included in the Senate amendments we just did, right?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I got the amendments from Senator Hester.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the knife and the firearm and the covered animal species parts or product is a fixed or integral part of an item, and the 20% of the weight of the musical instrument, knife, or firearm. I got that amendment.
so I guess the question is, do we have the 3 amendments that the Senate supposedly put on the bill?
And do you have the one from Huff?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have the one from Huff. I just have the 2 from Senator Hester.
But I'm just
Jennifer, can
saying,
you help us out here?
I'm just
Yeah,
saying
so
on the
Senator,
bill,
or delegates, I
Oh.
apologize. So the amendment from Senator Huff amends the amendments. So EHEA, apologies. EHEA passed the bill with a more complicated scientific exemption language that included the words American Zoological Association. So the Senator Huff amendment just strikes AZA out of that amendment. So it should be that in the text you have from Patrick, you have one clean amendment that doesn't include American Zoological Association. And I would definitely encourage everyone to verify, because we amended an amendment, so we understand we're causing a lot of extra work for poor Patrick, with our apologies.
so I guess,
Just for the record, we're working off of the 3rd reader, which has already been printed of the Senate bill. So it should have everything that was adopted by the Senate.
So the Senator Huff amendment is currently on the floor. They did not get to it today. So they moved the bill back to 2nd reader for the purposes of that amendment.
Oh.
So we would certainly encourage this committee, and Patrick, my apologies, because that's on me for not being clear. We would certainly encourage this committee to include that amendment, and I can send it to you right now, Patrick, via email if that's helpful, but it just strikes on the 3rd reader reprint of the Senate bill. It strikes lines 11 through 13, where it says accredited by the American Zoological Association.
Well, we might have to hold this. I mean, we do have time. It's March 1st. And I think everyone has agreement on it. It's just a matter of making sure we pass along the right bill to the full committee. Delegate Lehman, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you're going to hold it, I can try and go through the amendments we've talked about. It sounds like one might be missing, but Ms. Bevan-Dangle is asking us not to miss the opportunity to discuss. So, you know, it makes sense to hold it, but I was intrigued by part of what Mr. Tracy said, or someone, I think it was Patrick, who said something about the weight of, and I didn't know if you were talking about, or maybe Miss Delegate Clark said the weight of part of either an instrument or firearm. There was a different standard? Did I hear that right?
And a knife.
Well,
Yes.
what it's saying is, we're talking about covered animal parts, you know, ivory, think ivory.
Right, yes,
So if on an ivory handled, say, pistol,
right.
it's saying that the ivory cannot weigh more than 20% of the entire pistol.
So that's a carve out, in other words, and that's new. So it doesn't apply to anything where the ivory weighs less than 20%. Is that correct?
Let me get the context right here. Where did this go? This is for the exemptions.
Right. Okay.
So the current bill says this does not apply to musical instrument, provided that the covered animal species part or product, which is the ivory, was legally acquired, and the covered animal species part or product is a fixed integral part. We went through that. And the total weight of the covered animal species part or product, again, the ivory, is less than 200 grams is what the bill says now. And then it's amended to say 20% of the total weight of the musical instrument, the knife, or the firearm.
Okay. So that threshold only applies to those two types of products, firearms and knives.
And
Sorry.
musical instruments.
Oh, and instruments as well. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. Thanks.
So I did talk to the sponsor today, and the sponsor believes that there's been an agreement that everybody is living with. And Delegate Jacobs, we talked, and Delegate Clark, we talked, and Delegate Otto. And it's my understanding that with all the amendments, the Huff ones, and that everybody is good with this bill. Is that right?
I
Yes,
mean,
many-
I
many
am,
hours
if-
more.
if that's the case, if the amendments are what they pertain to the discussion has been.
Okay. Yeah. Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I certainly support the intent of this bill, but I guess my question is, how easy is it to determine percentage weight? As if when it was the original language, well, was it 200 grams? Well, that's maybe somewhat easier, but how do you figure out percentage of the total weight? I mean, is there within the field, is this easily figured out?
I think the amendment actually presents the same issue in that respect as the bill, because how do you know that the ivory weighs 200 grams? Might be something to run by the sponsor while we're waiting.
Yeah, well, it might be a little bit easier with 200 grams, because if you know, the whole piece is less than 200 grams, then, you know, the ivory is going to be less than 200. But in terms of percentage, but in any case.
How much is 200 grams in pounds and ounces?
That's your homework, Jerry.
Well, I'm too old to try to figure that stuff out. I'll have to ask the phone.
Okay. I think Delegate Lehman and Delegate Stein's questions have been answered. Delegate Ruth?
Thank you. I'm certainly not an expert, but I would think that mathematically, the density of ivory, and you could estimate the volume based on, length, width, heights, types of measurements, and estimate it. But I also think, I wondered if Jennifer has a better answer than that.
Thank you, Delegate. If I may, Mr. Subcommittee Chair. So these are really incidental parts, and that's why this language is only with musical instruments, knives, and guns, because what we're, envisioning here and what we're finding here is these are engraved pieces that are part of the stock of the gun or the knife handle. So the 20%, you can't have a knife that is fully made of ivory because that would clearly violate. But with musical instruments, it's the little piece in the bow of the violin, the keys on the piano. So it's not something that typically requires that level of accuracy to determine, because they're very clearly incidental parts. And that's why these can be treated somewhat differently than, antique vases or antique, jewelry, that it's much harder to discriminate what the percentage of the overall volume would be.
All right. Well, I was hoping to act on this today, but maybe the best thing to do is to just hold it. And I see, I just looked on the computer. It looks like it's still actually on third reader on the Senate floor. Is that right?
So it went back to second reader for the purposes of this Huff amendment, which again is a very clean amendment. It simply strikes lines 11 to 13 in that scientific exemption language. And I do believe Patrick in the email train has the text of that amendment.
And Delegate
so-
Gilchrist, remember when they send something back down to second reader, they usually put the amendment on and then pass it right away for third reader.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that, it's a House bill, but it's a Senate bill. Okay, well, if we all agree that, what we're looking for is the package that the Senate has on third reader. And if we can vote on that in concept, and I think I've talked to just about everybody today, including Senator Bailey, who was working on it on the Senate side, and including the sponsor. If we all agree that that's what we're after, and Jennifer Bevendangle, is it your understanding that this is what the Senate is doing and there's broad agreement?
Yes, sir. We were fortunate to work with the advocates on all sides this weekend to come up with consensus language. So it is just the one amendment, again, striking lines 11 through 13.
Well, thank you for doing that. If we're all comfortable with that, and then if there's any problem, I think I could just talk to the chairman, take full responsibility for our failure, and we'd bring it back to subcommittee. But if everyone's fine with it, we can vote on that motion. And if we have to rework it, we can bring it back to subcommittee. So is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, blame it on the Senate, Jim.
So can I move the bill? Do I need to say move the bill in the form that the Senate has it?
I think we understand what you're talking about.
I'll second that.
Second.
Patrick, you all right with that?
Yeah, it's subcommittee, it's informal.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Okay, if there turns out to be a problem, I'll talk to the chair and I think we can revisit it, but I think we all have a good sense of where we are. Patrick, that bill passes House Bill 52 favorable with amendment. Patrick, I believe that covers the list of bills we have with you today.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
What about,
Delegate Ruth?
I'm sorry, what about HB 22?
Yeah, those, we have two bills left that are Kristen's bills.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So,
So 52, we passed that?
yes, with the amendment, with the Senate amendments,
Okay.
as is on third reader currently in the Senate. Okay. Patrick, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Patrick.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
We have Kristen Flynn with us today. Kristen, thank you. We may as well go in numerical order. House Bill 15, once again, is for discussion. What I notice is it's right on the line of a bill that even with Ways and Means taking out the tax, it's right on the line of a bill that needs extra fiscal note attention. But we did talk about it last week. So we'll, any discussion on it now before we hold it?
So, Delegate Gilchrist, my understanding last week was that they were taking out the personal property tax, is that what it was? Or tax exemption,
The sales and use tax exemption.
sales and use tax, I'm sorry, sales and use tax. So I think you're right. I think we should probably get a fiscal note on that, a change on that.
Yeah, well, it will just be taken out in total. So
Right.
there won't be, I don't think we'll get an official change from DLS.
That's
But-
correct. And the fiscal note does go into the operational costs for MDA, separate from the revenue loss from a sales and use tax exemption.
Yeah, and that comes down right around the 250,000 level that we should get extra eyes on before we pass it out of subcommittee.
As they say, it's above our pay grade.
Okay, any other discussion on House Bill 15? All right, we'll hold House Bill 15. House Bill 22 is another situation where we actually, in this case, I believe the Senate has actually sent a bill over. So it's not a third readings situation in the Senate. Kristen, can you tell us where we are with House Bill 22 and Senate Bill 67?
Yeah, and so I did send out an amendment draft that would conform the House bill to the Senate bill as passed by the Senate. The bill essentially prohibits a person from performing a decline procedure on a cat unless it's a veterinary practitioner performing the procedure for a therapeutic purpose. The bill as introduced would have required the board to refuse, suspend, revoke, censure, just basically impose penalties on veterinarians who fail to comply with the prohibition on decline. And what the amendment language would do, it would strike that language. And so instead of requiring, some sort of sanction, it would authorize the board to suspend or revoke the license of a veterinarian who willfully violates the decline prohibition.
I'm sorry, say that last part again.
So instead of requiring the board to suspend or revoke a license, it would authorize the board to suspend or revoke a license, but only for willful violations of the prohibition. So willful is also being added.
All right, discussion on this, Delegate Jacobs?
All right, so let me understand this, Kristen. Because you said in the beginning that it's a prohibition unless it's for therapeutic reason. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
So tell me what therapeutic is.
It means to address a physical or medical condition that compromises the health or well-being of an animal. And it does not include a cosmetic or aesthetic reason or reasons of convenience in keeping or handling the animal.
So that's only relevant to the pet and not to the patient, to the person.
Correct. Right.
So if a person had, on blood thinners or some kind of immune disease that that could be compromised by the cat's paws that would not apply in this particular situation.
Right, it would not apply.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Stein.
Yeah, Kristen, could you, and I'm sorry if this is the third time, I guess you repeated it, the language about actions against veterinarians.
So the board can take action against a veterinarian who violates prohibition, but only if it's a willful violation.
I guess I'm a little confused because any violation would be willful. I mean, it's not like an accident that a vet would declaw cats, but if this is what, advocates are okay with, then I'll go along with it. But I just don't see how willful, how you prove a willful violation that's any different from a violation in this case.
I mean, Christian, I mean, if a veterinarian felt it was in the best interest of the cat and he declawed a cat, that wouldn't necessarily be willful. I mean, it would be his opinion that was in the best interest of his patient, correct?
Well, that would be up to the board to determine that.
All right, we got, let's go Delegate Ruth, Delegate Lehman, then Morris Cyphers and Jennifer Bevan Dangle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to ask if one of the advocates, Jennifer or Maura, or both could address this.
Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Delegate Ruth. I think from the veterinary perspective, and I'm not an attorney, what is the definition of willful and what authority does that give the board or not is a little bit concerning. I think, when we had been discussing with the bill proponents, it was a little bit more like we're going to give the board the shall or may authority, and every other veterinary violation is, of course, under the board may, based on their discretion. But then what does willful mean? And I think that's where, we're a little bit perplexed. Like, where did that come from?
Can I hear from Jennifer, please, also?
Certainly, and not a vet, but I am an attorney. The willful language is exactly as Delegate Clark would say. So say the vet thought there was a tumor or a broken toe. They actually had a dog that was declawed because it had a broken toe. And you go in and you find out that, in fact, there was not a tumor, it was a misreading, it was a bad scan. I think that's what would go to the board as evidence of whether or not it was a willful declaw in violation of the statute.
And then if that veterinarian was, if the board decided it was, what would be the penalty? Jennifer?
The board is a suite of options, including fine and or I'm getting to that section. Apologies.
Suspension, losing your license. Yeah. It's a suite of options that are pretty aggressive.
Aren't they? I was just going to say, isn't that pretty aggressive in a time in society where we're not trying to create penalties for people that do things that aren't necessarily the right thing to do? We're looking to not to make more harsher penalties and almost criminalize people. I mean, losing a license is, for a veterinarian is awful extreme.
Absolutely. And that's why we were excited to accept this amendment, because it puts the penalties, instead of being a separate set of potential penalties, all it does is it adds the declaw, the act of declawing a cat to the existing list of disciplinary actions. So it's not a new set of penalties. It's not a new set of violations or actions by the board. It simply says that just like any other failure to comply with these rules, decline would be one of those. It would be treated the same as any other, including a civil malpractice case, obtaining a license by fraud or misrepresentation, being negligent or deliberately cruel to an animal. So the amendment puts this in line with any other existing penalty structure.
But I think when you're like providing this service as for a client you've known for 15 years who's on the brink of death, like that's not malpractice.
Delegate Lehman and Delegate Ruth. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just summing up, to go back to the question, so Delegate Clark or somebody said, how can it be an accident? So I'm understanding that it's not a question of whether somebody accidentally, it's a question of whether they are, genuinely believe that this is a therapeutic case. And it turns out it's not a therapeutic case. So we don't want to penalize that for them. Is that correct? Okay. And I think, Eric, can I call on Eric to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that the board also has the option with the new language of doing nothing. So the board, which is loaded with veterinarians, will have the option to say there are circumstances here and we're not going to do anything. We're giving them maximum flexibility.
Maura?
Thank you. I think one quick thing. So as far as I know, in the last 12 years, the board has had one declawing issue come before them. So just like to put in, this is not, I think, quite the scale of the problem that the proponents think it is, but also they try to do their best by animals and public health. And I don't think it's fair to say the board is stacked with veterinarians and therefore they won't seek penalties or, do their best to enforce the law. We've, I think, discussed some potential avenues that make a little bit more sense and give veterinarians the flexibility that they're requesting in very rare special cases, because in terms of what MDVMA and AVMA wants, they want to discourage this practice as much as possible. They find it extraordinarily distasteful. And I think it's, a handful of practicing veterinarians who would like to preserve this and want to make sure that for their aging patients, it's in place. And I'm sure folks listen to the Senate debate, but we're not in support of any kind of procedure for, to address environmental concerns or someone's cat tearing up the couch. That's not, that wasn't an accurate reflection of my client's position. So I think it's a little bit more nuanced than what we've heard.
So the Veterinarian Association or the lobbying arm of the Veterinarians Association, with the changes that were made on the Senate side, did they favor the bill now? No, they still don't favor it.
Yeah, so what was discussed in concept is not what came out on paper, which was this inclusion of willful language, which I think is pretty concerning.
Okay, Delegate Ruth, and then Delegate Lehman, then Lisa Radoff.
So it was my understanding that this was compromise language, and now it seems like the veterinarians are going back on the compromise. Is that?
No, I don't think that's a fair way to qualify this at all. We discussed moving this language from the board shall take action to the board may, but then I can't tell you what willful means or what the board's intent is in terms of interpreting that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lisa, can I ask Lisa to contribute?
Sure. I just wanted to weigh in about willful. I think that leaving it up to the vet board, if a veterinarian is just disregarding and not following the protocols and looking at each case, and there's a pattern of that practice that they're just doing a lot of declaws, that would be the kind of example of when this would be enforced. But for, especially for what we're hearing from the veterinarians, if it's not done that much, this would be unusual, that it would be willful and that this kind of action would have to be taken. So I don't think this is something that we would see a lot, but it would be there just in case it was repeated and really was egregious.
So respectfully, Lisa, like, we discussed, and I think that's where, like, we have provided more nuanced language to get at this problem with more certainty, because the board can do what the board wants, and the board's leadership changes periodically. And I think just, having represented the veterinarians for probably 5 or 6 years, like, they will follow the letter of the law, and they should. And so I think it's good for the board to have discretion, and may is better than shall, for sure. But I think to argue that willfully is like giving them even more flexibility is maybe, we would disagree with that characterization, and that just wasn't part of our conversation. So I'm not saying that like this is all out war, but I think that is where we are now. So I wasn't aware of that language inclusion, and I think we still need to figure it out. Apologies. My kids have COVID and I don't have another caretaker.
Come on. Be
Sorry.
safe. Okay, where are we? Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Delegate Ruth for all her good questions. So I just wanted to clarify, because Delegate Stein asked, he was the first one who raised the question around willful and how would that be determined. First of all, I think, we all know the basic meaning of willful, meaning deliberate, but I looked it up just to see if it was more nuanced. And the second definition to me, like, spoke more maybe to what the whoever amended this bill in this way had in mind, and it's having or showing a stubborn and determined intention to do as one wants, regardless of the consequences. Hopefully that only describes a very few rare, examples of someone that's holding on, as someone used the phrase, someone's holding on to this, notion that there are defensible reasons to do this. But to Delegate Stein's specific question, could someone talk briefly about this being, I'm assuming it has to be a complaint-driven system. So somebody would have to go, whoever that might be, it might be a really unhappy cat owner that feels like they were sort of somehow coerced into this, or didn't know better, or didn't realize there were options. Or maybe it's a family member, a friend, or somebody after someone has their cat declawed that says, hey, wait, I don't think they're supposed to be doing that anymore. And then I assume an investigation would ensue. So any comment or insight quickly on that? And who does that? Is it the board itself? Does it have those powers? Or who would do that at the state level, or would it be done at the county level?
It's the board. The board, that's how they receive complaints and review complaints and decide what steps to take and how far to go. But that's all under their authority.
So they have actual investigators, Kristen?
Yeah, they have. So they work with the Department of Agriculture staff. So actually the investigators or inspectors, there's 2 ways I think complaints can come in, is through like an inspection report. If somebody was offsite or at facilities, inspecting facilities, and saw something, it'd be in a report, and the board would be notified. And that's more of like, sanitation and stuff issues. And then you have the complaint, the consumer makes submits a form or whatever directly to the board. And they review it and use MDA staff, I believe, to to, information, evidence gather.
Thank you.
Delegate Stein?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that I'm fine with the willful language based on the explanation that Jennifer provided. So I understand how it would apply. So I withdraw any question that I had about that.
All right. Do we have a motion to?
What, can I ask one more question?
Yes, of course.
Obviously for the cat to get into the veterinarian's office, to be asked to be declawed, it has to be taken in by the owner of the cat or someone. Is there any liability on the owner of the cat or the whoever possesses this cat that goes in and requests something like that, or it goes
This is
in
just
with-
on the performance of the procedure.
just on the performance of the procedure? And off the performance of the procedure, a veterinarian could actually lose his license or her license.
That would be up to the board to decide, but that is one of the, that's one of the actions they could take, but that would be up to the board. They can take a variety of disciplinary actions,
Okay.
including a suspension of a license.
Mr. Chair, I move the bill.
Second,
The bill, the Senate version of the bill?
Yes, sir. Oh, do we?
We
do I
have
need
the
to say-
amendment, so
I think you may as well make it a two-parter. Do the amendments first.
Move the amendment.
second,
All those in favor of the amendments, Senate amendments?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have the Senate amendments on the bill. And I think there was somebody who wanted to say something. Okay, no, all right. Delegate Foley.
yes, I want to move the bill as amended.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Delegate Jacobs, discussion?
Yeah, I'm voting against the bill. I had a long discussion with my veterinarian this weekend, who I have enormous faith in. It's done miracles with my animals, and there's no doubt in my mind that the best decision of the welfare of an animal should be made by a veterinarian and not by me, a legislator. And I don't think it's in my best interest to vote on how a trained animal health professional conducts their business with their clients. So I respectfully vote against the bill.
Thank you, Jay. Okay,
And I'm a nay as well, Mr. Chairman.
I agree with Jay. I mean, I really wanted to vote for this bill, but for me, the sticking point is the fact that a veterinarian could lose his license, and I think that's very extreme. And just the fact that it's there bothers me. We're down, we're trying to calm down people's liability on doing things that are wrong, and for a veterinarian, I mean, to me, it's no different than a regular doctor. So I'm not going to be able to support it.
I know,
But I truly wanted to.
we appreciate everyone's efforts on this. Okay, so we have, is that 3 against? Okay, bill passes with the Senate amendments. Okay, well, we did a number of things today. But we have completed all 9 bills on the agenda. We will expect the subcommittee to meet again next Tuesday unless announced otherwise. And everybody have a good week. See you soon.
Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, guys.
I'm sorry, Delegate Ruth. Ruth?
I just wanted to apologize for Tamara for, casting any, aspersions on her if my comments were, disrespectful.
Well, thank you, Delegate Ruth. I didn't notice anything. I don't think there's a problem, but please follow up if there is. But no, I didn't notice anything. Everybody have a good week.